the administration's been pretty clear. They're going to deport you if you're in the country illegally. And they have made a concerted effort to deport people who have criminal records, who have violent criminal records. Again, 70% of the ICE arrests. Interestingly, of the 2.5 million people they've deported, 1.9 million self-deported.
They haven't, well, I was going to say, they haven't deported 2.9 million people.
2.5.
2.5. They have not deported 2.5 million people. That self-deporting figure is heavily disputed. But look, there's no question. They've expanded the net to include many, many people who really pose no risk to anyone.
In today's video, Abby Phillip dismantles Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as heated CNN debate erupts over the Trump administration's mass deportation push. Abby Phillip presses Scott Jennings with hard facts on ICE's rushed plans to detain tens of thousands of immigrants in massive warehouse-style facilities, the growing immigration court backlog, and disturbing reports of inhumane conditions already unfolding. As Scott Jennings tries to defend the policy, the reality of indiscriminate arrests, legal chaos, and human cost takes center stage. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
The Trump administration is on a time crunch to carry out the largest mass deportation of 1 million people by Wednesday. An analysis by the Washington Post finds that the administration has shifted its tactics and has led to a major surge in at-large arrests in recent months. The Post is also reporting that ICE documents show that a plan to detain more than 80,000 immigrants at any given time, in warehouses across multiple states. Meanwhile, a union representing immigration judges say that the massive backlog of cases is only getting worse. Nearly 100 have been fired nationwide since President Trump took office, and just as many have resigned or retired. Now, this warehouse plan, Christine, they're talking about facilities that hold up to 10,000 people. I mean, this is almost like monopoly money when we talk about this stuff, but 10,000 human beings in a single facility under detention, I think should raise some eyebrows.
I mean, it's inhumane. There is no question about it. And, you know, we may or may not be deporting these people, but they're still in the United States, and they should be treated with the way we would treat anyone else in the United States. But to think about warehousing 10,000 people, it is going to be prone to violence. It is not going to be safe. It is not going to be healthy. It's a plan in response to a decision the president made without really having thought it through or really thought about how to support that decision. And I think it's going to just end up in the courts, and undoubtedly the warehouses will, I believe, be shut down because they will be just inhumane.
So what is inhumane? According to this solicitation, DHS has not even confirmed this plan, but I think the Washington Post and other outlets have seen the solicitation that's been sent out to vendors. What is inhumane about retrofitting and renovating these vacant warehouses with, quote, showers and restrooms, kitchens, dining areas, a medical unit, indoor and outdoor recreation areas, and a law library?
These are the very same people who are alleging that they are going to retrofit are the very same people who had children sleeping on the floor in cages with nothing
Didn't
more
the Obama administration do that
with
too?
nothing more than these silver blankets over them that we give out to people after they run a marathon. I would not believe these people based on their past record of what they have done to children, nonetheless, in this case, adults. And given the fact that the president has created all of these deadlines that this many people have to be deported by this date or arrested by that date, they're really going to spend the time to retrofit these in a proper way? And then what's the staffing level? How many staff are going to be on site? What is the medical provisions that are going to be on site?
That's part of what the proposal is for, Christine.
But if you
it's
look
to
at the
identify what gaps may exist.
Is
to refine the plan.
The president is never going to give the process the time it would need to truly retrofit something to that size. And we know that facilities that large just generally do not work.
What stands out in this is that the concern isn't ideology, it's logistics, law, and basic human reality. Large-scale detention has already been studied extensively, and the record is grim. The Department of Homeland Security's own Office of Inspector General has repeatedly found that overcrowded ICE facilities correlate with higher rates of medical neglect, assaults, and deaths in custody. That's not speculation, it's documented history. There's also the legal bottleneck no one can wish away. Immigration courts were already facing a backlog of more than 3 million cases before recent firings and resignations. Firing judges while accelerating arrests guarantees longer detention, not faster deportation. That means more people sitting in limbo for months, sometimes years, which courts have ruled raises serious due process concerns. Then there's cost. Detaining one person in ICE custody averages over $100 per day. Warehousing tens of thousands of people quickly balloons into billions of taxpayer dollars, often for individuals who pose no public safety risk and have no criminal record. Alternatives like supervised release and case management programs are far cheaper and effective at ensuring court appearances. History also matters. Previous administrations that rushed detention expansion were later forced to shut facilities after lawsuits exposed unsafe conditions. Courts don't care about political deadlines. They care about constitutional standards. What Christine Quinn is tapping into is the simple truth that speed doesn't equal competence. When policy is driven by quotas instead of capacity, the result is chaos, suffering, and lawsuits that derail goals.
One of the, let me just read a little bit from, this was a story that we ran about some of the existing facilities from an attorney who's dealing with some of the children's rights groups. Conditions of confinement and treatment of families appear to have worsened, with families reporting horrific conditions such as denial of critical medical care, worms and mold in the food that results in children becoming ill, and threats of family separation by officers and staff. This administration has also seen more deaths in custody under this deportation regime than at any point in the recent history of this country. There are problems, and some of these facilities are terrible, and there's no indication that that's going to get any worse when you're cramming thousands of people into hastily retrofitted warehouses.
Yeah, the problem with the administration is something that Christine is really tapping her finger on, which is a basic level of the ability to perform the functions of government in any way that we can all have confidence. I mean, from the Secretary of Defense, who is signal chatting his friends about what's going on in battle plans, to whatever's happening when they go out into the community and they're grabbing people off the street and chasing them into daycare centers because they're supposed to be going after the worst of the worst, but we're grabbing moms out of daycare lines and teachers. We can't quite trust that these people know what they're doing. And I think that the idea of handing such a grave and great responsibility to them, they got to show and prove a little bit that they're up to that, even if we agree that that was something they should do.
Voters handed that grave responsibility to them in November
voters
last year.
Voters are saying now they were for something that's not what they're getting, which is like a level of brutality that nobody really signed up for, and that is the problem.
Scott.
A couple things. ICE today published some data. 70% of the arrests made by ICE since Trump became president are people with violent criminal records. That's number one. Number two, I just have a question for you. You said these facilities would be prone to violence. Why?
When you put that many individuals in a facility together.
Why would they be violent?
Because when you put that many people in one facility together, that is what tends to happen.
Are you not worried about when you put that many people into a country they could be prone to violence, or just in a facility?
You don't cram 10,000 people into one
We crammed 20 million
building.
into the country. You sort of admitted that, some violent populations are being rounded up here.
Absolutely not. But when people are desperate, people are shoved into one warehouse without a proper bathrooms, without proper medical,
They're
without
putting in all these things.
What about what I read?
Evidence based
Scott, why do you keep going to an ethnographic lens when you have this conversation? You're putting these people into a place. You did say that.
You said they're prone to violence. I'm asking you why.
No, I didn't. I said
You said
big
these
facilities
people.
like this are
And
prone
I'm
to
asking
violence.
you why are they prone to violence?
Because it shows anytime we kind of corral people, warehouse people, it creates desperation. It has nothing to do specifically with the people who are there. It has to do with that kind of a facility.
Jamal Simmons and Christine Quinn are pushing back on is backed up by hard data, not vibes. Large-scale detention has consistently failed when rushed. A 2023 DHS Inspector General report found that overcrowding directly increases deaths in ICE custody because facilities cannot deliver timely medical care, especially for chronic illness and mental health crises. That risk multiplies when sites are retrofitted warehouses with inexperienced staff. The violence concern isn't about who migrants are, it's about how institutions behave under pressure. The Bureau of Justice Statistics has shown for decades that overcrowding drives assaults in prisons and jails regardless of inmate background. Mixed people with unresolved legal status, limited access to counsel, and uncertainty about family separation and stress becomes combustible. The administration's own numbers raise red flags. Even if 70% of arrests involve people with criminal records, DHS data also shows many of those offenses are non-violent or years old. Collapsing everyone into massive facilities ignores basic classification standards that corrections experts say are essential for safety. Then there's competence. ICE already struggles to meet medical and oversight requirements in smaller centers. Federal courts have repeatedly ordered releases because agencies failed to meet constitutional standards. Scaling that dysfunction up doesn't fix it, it magnifies it. Voters may have supported enforcement, but enforcement without planning becomes brutality by default. Jamal Simmons is right that government has to prove it can execute policy responsibly. Christine Quinn is right that speed without infrastructure leads to lawsuits, harm, and public backlash. Period.
There are a lot of disputes about the numbers, but even if you take what DHS is saying at face value, you have about a third of the people being put in facilities with some people who are violent. Some of those criminal convictions, by the way, may or may not necessarily be violent convictions, but you're basically collapsing those populations. So you have DACA recipients, right, who are in the same facilities as people who are violent. That's also happening as well. I mean, I don't know that that really makes a lot of sense. There are people who are being rounded up who pose no risk to anyone.
Well, look, the administration's been pretty clear. They're going to deport you if you're in the country illegally. And they have made a concerted effort to deport people who have criminal records, who have violent criminal records. Against 70% of the ICE arrests. Interestingly, of the 2.5 million people they've deported, 1.9 million self-deported.
They haven't, well, I was going to say, they haven't deported 2.9 million people.
2.5.
2.5. They have not
1.9 is
deported 2.5
self-deported.
million people. That self-deporting figure is heavily disputed. But look, there's no question. They've expanded the net to include many, many people who really pose no risk to anyone. They are grabbing people indiscriminately in some cases in immigration raids, including some U.S. citizens. So there's a degree to which the efforts to get to the numbers, to have a big number to show the world, has resulted in many people who really don't pose a risk to anyone being rounded up and now potentially being put
And what
into these
Americans were
facilities.
promised was that the worst of the worst, that really dangerous people, not American citizens, that I know.
Who has been arrested?
I know
What
American citizens who have been
Scott,
detained
we've
and
talked about
arrested.
this.
It's a fact.
There is currently a lawsuit by an American citizen who was detained for
One?
days. There are several of them. I'm just
Isn't
saying.
one too
I
many?
know individuals.
Are you
If you were
Should we
arrested,
shut down all immigration enforcement over
Okay.
one mistake?
I'm just saying,
It's
Scott,
If I
more than
granted you
one
one
mistake.
mistake,
just
would
a
you
second.
shut down all
Scott, just a
immigration
second.
enforcement?
It's not one mistake. It's a factual matter that American citizens have been caught up in this stuff. That has happened. So let's just leave that there.
Abby Phillip and Christine Quinn are warning about is backed up by decades of evidence. When you warehouse people at scale, outcomes get worse regardless of intent. DOJ and DHS reports have repeatedly found that overcrowded detention facilities see higher rates of assaults, suicide attempts, and medical neglect because staff cannot safely classify or monitor detainees. That risk spikes when populations with very different legal statuses and risk profiles are mixed together. ICE's own internal standards recommend separating low-risk civil detainees from people with violent histories. Ignoring that isn't just inefficient, it's dangerous. DACA recipients and long-settled immigrants are not trained to navigate carceral environments, and forcing them into the same facilities as hardened offenders creates predictable harm. This isn't about demonizing migrants, it's about basic correction science. The numbers argument also falls apart under scrutiny. Independent audits show that many so-called violent records include non-violent offenses or decades-old convictions. Expanding enforcement to meet political quotas has already resulted in US citizens being detained, which federal courts have confirmed in multiple cases. That alone signals systemic failure, not a one-off mistake. And history matters here. Large-scale immigration crackdowns in the 1950s, 1990s, and post-9/11s all produced civil rights violations later acknowledged by the government itself. Speed-driven enforcement always outruns due process. Abby Phillip and Christine Quinn are right to focus on structure, not slogans. If the goal is public safety, collapsing everyone into massive detention warehouses undermines it, the evidence says. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.